starting and see if anybody out there might want to join us also.
So can you hear me, Dr. Good?
Yes.
See, that's the first part, right? Is making sure the non-technical guy can be heard on a technical system. Here's what's fun, right? So I'm a personality. And a big one at that. My mother always said,
you're a character.
I'm a character. Mom said I was always a legend in my own mind. I'd love to hear myself talk. No doubt about it. And here I am sitting behind a very technical live streaming podcasting system. And I've got Dr. Be Good and I both on the same screen. You're hearing us. And we're able to live stream not just to Dr. Be Good's Facebook page, but to my Facebook page, JP Kathy and the Crew's Facebook page, our Twitter Periscope page, our YouTube page. So right now you can catch Dr. Be Good on multiple platforms, plus our live feed streams. And so that's very exciting for us. We have figured out that while radio is great, what we have figured is people are now staying home. People are no longer in their cars going to work. That the live streaming world, podcasting world, starts at about 7:30 in the morning and goes until about 6 o'clock at night when dinner starts. And so we found that this is a better medium for us to get out our message, to talk to people, be entertaining for people. This is where it's at. And so we're very, very excited about where this is at. And so, of course, you've got a non-technical guy running a technical show at this point. And so there may be a few glitches this morning, but normally Charles Gura, who's our consultant and our tech guy at info@pro-multis.com, does a great job. And so we're excited. We've got Dr. Good with us this morning on the JP Kathy and the Crew network. And you too could have your own show. Again, don't use this as a barometer because I'm running the show this morning on a first run through. So poor Dr. Be Good gets to be my experiment again. And so, but we're excited. And Dr. Be Good, we feel like we can reach more parents, students, and more educators in this format. We have a lot of teachers and administrators on the feed that'll pay attention. And a lot of people already jumped on. And I'm telling people, hey, like Sharon Inman, who may not normally be on Ask Dr. Be Good, is now listening to Dr. Be Good this morning. Marty McClellan out of Maryland is listening to Dr. Be Good this morning. So, absolutely. I just got to figure out why I keep losing Dr. Be Good. So I'm ready to turn it over to you there, Dr. Good. Oops, there you are. Dr. Good, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take over the show, and I'll be right here behind the screen waiting for you.
And my caller later on today. We're going to have Carla Smith join us again. She's our teacher expert that we like to have on every once in a while to talk to us from the field. But for right now, we have still the anxiety out there. I see a lot of articles written by mental health experts. And certainly we want to acknowledge that and bring information about that. And in this case, the Dallas Morning News has an expert, Dr. Madhukar Trivedi, and he is a mental health expert, and he was asked by the public in the area, and he's making 8 suggestions for combating the mental health effects of the coronavirus. And so he shared tips for coping with what is a very scary time during his July 23rd conference call with the Dallas Morning News. And so we're going to share a little bit about that because mental health has finally become acceptable to talk about, to tap into. And so certainly on the Ask Dr. Be Good show, we're going to be doing that as well. There will be ongoing themes and mental health tips for our parents, for our students will be, as part of our work. So let's see, what groups are the most vulnerable to mental health issues? The first are people who have had trouble with depression, anxiety, alcohol use, and drug use in the past, or are currently experiencing it. The second and larger group includes those who have struggled with anxiety, depression in the past, and were able to function in the pre-COVID. This is interesting. Function in the pre-COVID, but now can't. And they can't because before what they were doing is they were using friends. They were using family members, just people that they could talk to. They're noticing the higher rates of domestic violence that we've talked about. Let's see. So the third group of people who are still struggling to figure out how to best navigate the COVID-19 crisis. And they're the group that can benefit from more information and more support. So one of the upsides of the pandemic, he says, is that insurance companies have recognized the need for mental health care, and virtual care has become more widely available. And that's really good to understand, that virtual care may now become the norm. People don't have to leave their houses. They don't have to think about getting in the car, finding the office. I don't know how many of us, I know I have, tried to find a doctor's office. The numbering system on the buildings is terrible. You finally get.
All right, so while we're waiting for Dr. Good to come on back on, looks like we lost her Facebook feed. I know that she's got a great guest coming on here in a little bit, in Carla Smith. Certainly excited. She is a master teacher, so do get ready for her to come on. And again, we'll be figuring this out as we rock and roll and get the sound to work. Looks like we're losing internet connection. So let's get Dr. Good back on here and talking to you about good old-fashioned education. You know, with education, the way everything is changing, there's a constant evolving that is going on with what's happening with COVID-19. As you can see, there are some schools that are coming back, and then there are some schools that are not coming back. They're going to go the complete opposite direction, which is to go into a hybrid environment or an environment of only online schooling. So the key is that we want to make sure that you, the families, understand what's going on and how that's going on. There we go. We've got Dr. Good back. Dr. Good, I was talking to them about COVID-19 and the constant changing and the importance of tuning in to your show every morning that they have possible, and even catch the replays, so that there can be success in education for their families. And we do have Carla Smith with us, so when you're ready for her, just let me know.
Okay, so I don't know how much time I missed. I had started talking about the need for always making sure that I touch back every once in a while on mental health tips, and I happen to, and you talked about the Corona change, and that change is leading to mental health issues. And so just to just touch base, because again, much like your show, you do it every week. I don't do it every week, but I like to come back every few weeks and make sure that I bring viable mental health tips to our audience. And Dr. Madhukar Trivedi answered questions from the Dallas Morning News audience.
There you go. Yep, we got you. I think our internet keeps dropping. On my end, I'm running right now at a terabyte, so I'm running very fast. So sometimes internet may drop, not drop. Maybe there's some interference in the world, but we got you back, Dr. Good.
Okay. So let me be quick about this. So Dr. Turi answered Dallas Morning News questions. And first of all, the most vulnerable group are your people who have had trouble with depression, anxiety, and alcohol use in the past and are currently experiencing that again. Your second most vulnerable group are those who have struggled with depression and anxiety, but were able to function before. They had coping skills. They had a coping environment. They had friends and family that they could go and talk to when they felt anxiety. Well, that environment is not there anymore. Everybody's sheltering in place. And so now they feel lost. And so making sure that those people understand that there are mental health resources available really at your fingertips more than you know and more than ever before. Dr. Trivedi has mentioned that insurance companies are now recognizing the need for virtual sessions, and that's probably something that will never go away. And having a virtual meeting where you don't have to get in your car, you don't have to drive in traffic, you don't have to find the building.
All right, we'll have Dr. Good pop back on again. Looks like I said, we're dropping the internet, picking it back up this morning.
Okay.
It's interesting. There you go. You're back, Dr. Good.
Oh yeah, I've learned what to do on this side. So the other thing is, if you need mental health care resources, UT Southwestern has on their website resources. Dallas County and the City of Dallas all have mental health resources available. Plus, you've heard me talk about the Region 10 Service Center has mental health resources. And if you're not in the Region 10 resource area, Region 10 would love for you to tap into them, even if you're not, by the way. Region 10 is a very service-oriented organization. They are run by Gordon Taylor, the director, very, very generous-hearted man, and he would love for all of Texas to tap into the Region 10 mental health resources or anything else that they have on their website. So if you're in Texas, you can do that. The other audience that we need to pay attention to are teenagers. I'm sure most of you are reading or have read about the fact that that is, as far as school children, our most vulnerable group. They tend to have suicide ideation more. And so if you have teens at home, making sure that you are talking to them. You know, a lot of times parents are under the premise that if they don't talk about it, it won't happen. For example, if we don't talk to our kids about sex education, then they won't get pregnant. When in fact, research shows that parents who talk to their kids about sex ed have kids who tend not to get pregnant, and they have less of a pregnancy percentage of getting pregnant. So talk to your kids about how they're feeling. And really, sleep is so important for all of us, but for teens as well. They tend to want to, they tend to want to stay up late, talk to their friends, right? And then they sleep late and they get into that cycle of really not being part of the family because they're still in bed when you're at lunch, and then they're sluggish. And so try to get them to have a sleep-wake cycle so that they're not staying up late, sleeping too late into the day. Include physical activity into all of your days, not only our teens, and monitor the consumption of news, making sure that you and your kids are not really being bombarded. Don't have the TV on all day on the news channels. It's not healthy for any of you, any of us. We certainly, in our home, we stopped doing that a while back. Every once in a while, if there's news that's different than, than the norm, we might turn it on during the day, but TV stays off now. So, okay. One of the things that we have also learned in our new environment is that many districts have extended their opening of the first day of school. I know we did for 2 weeks. When we came back from our 2-week break, we had on the calendar, it was 3 weeks before we were supposed to open in a new remote environment. And my leadership came to me and said, can we have more time? So we now are starting 2 weeks later. Dallas ISD has extended, I believe, till after Labor Day. So what I thought to do was to give tips for parents and grandparents of still things that you can do to prevent what used to be called summer learning loss, right? The summer slide. But now we call it the COVID slide, right? Because they've been really not learning in school since the third week of March. So let's talk about how to prevent summer learning loss, COVID loss, and still have fun. This one was written before COVID, so I'm turning it into what we do with COVID with these suggestions. So, first of all, I like research, and we know that the phenomenon of the summer slide has been documented in many countries, including the United States. The study suggests that kids may lose anywhere from 25 to 50% of their school year gains in math, and children can backtrack on the course of their language skills as well, including reading, writing, and spelling. But overall, there's the reading and the loss in reading is less than the loss in math. And why is that? Well, because it's a reflection of use it or lose it. We tend to, even as kids, we're reading things. We're reading signs. We're reading the back of the cereal box. We're reading things, whereas we're not just sitting down and saying, I think I'm going to do some mathematics now. I'm going to do some multiplication. That's just not happening, right? So we need to, and it's interesting that the researchers here suggest that one of the ways we can avoid this is by extending the school year and having year-round school, which, was tossed around a little bit during the April and May months of COVID. Many districts and some districts have done it. The Commissioner of Education wishes everybody would do it. It is the right thing to do. I wish we would do it. There tends to be a little bit of a backlash in the end from parents who, and here's what I'll tell you, parents. I've heard it so many times. Parents say, I think my child should have summer off from school. Research bears out the fact that that's just not a instructionally healthy thing to do. And so we in education battle the thoughts of adults who went through the school system a certain way and then want that for their child, even though today's kids are very, very different from when we grew up. And we being my age, your age, school kids are different because of technology, because of the internet. We're not raising the same kind of kids, and we need to have a different type of school. So we're going to have to work on parents a little bit to let that happen for us. So let's see. It's not too late to start a summer reading program. Book it. There's Pizza Hut has a program where if kids read a certain amount, they get a coupon for a free personal pan pizza. It's not too late to sign up for that. You just have to Google it. Now, one of the things that we have to be careful of with reading programs, we go somewhere and get books for our kids. We let our kids pick books, and then the school says they haven't grown any during the summer. And you say, well, I spent all summer taking my kids to get books. Unfortunately, what happens is kids who got to pick their own books usually tended to pick books that were consistently too easy for them. And so as a parent, if you want to help with a reading program, you need to help kids pick books that your child is excited about the content and is excited to read, but that the material will stretch your child's skills and will introduce some new words and ideas. Talk to your librarian. Go to the library online and interact with the library online so that you can help get exciting, interactive type of books for your kids that will still stretch their minds, stretch their vocabulary, stretch their comprehension skills. And then ask them questions about the books. We have parents who are very excited, kinder parents that bring their kids and their kids can read beautifully. The fluidity, but when you ask the child questions about the book, about what happened in the book, the comprehension skills are not there. And so what that tells us is that parents need to do better around asking questions when the child is reading a story, and introduce concepts like main idea, the setting of the story, who are the main characters. Did you like the ending of the story? How could we have changed the ending of the story? What would have happened if the main character had done this instead? And so you're entering into a discussion with your child around the story, but bringing in a new opportunities to synthesize the information in a different way. What would have happened if that story had taken part in a place that was cold instead of very hot like this one, because it's a tropical story? What would have happened if what would have happened if there had been another character involved that interfered with the story? There are question stems out there if you need them, but just entering into a discussion around the story with your child on a consistent basis will make that normal for your child and keep conversation flowing between you. And that's really important for parent-child relationships. All right, set aside time to review math skills. Your districts probably have done this for you because most districts have math software that they want you to do with your child at least every other day. They have math and reading, of course. But if all you do is every other day make sure that they're on for 30 minutes and you actually ask them to show you every other day for 30 minutes, you will help them tremendously. All right, let me see. And try some of the apps out there. DragonBox has DragonBox app numbers is for grades ages 4 to 8 to develop intuitive understanding of numbers through gameplay. And then DragonBox Algebra 5 Plus is aimed at children 5 and up that secretly teaches algebra concepts. DragonBox Algebra 12 Plus is also available. There are so many apps out there. Some of them are free. And also just playing cards. Helping with math concepts, playing cards with your kids, playing games, board games helps with that. There's so many fun ways that don't involve sitting down with a piece, with a paper, pencil, and a item, math problem that can keep the math concepts strong in your children. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our guest on, and let's talk to Carla Smith, our teacher expert that we like to tap into. I love having someone from the field available to really let us know when we talk about these COVID gaps. Like, for example, I saw an article that said, as the new year approaches, how will districts address the COVID slide? And they had a term in here that I really liked and I'm going to steal, and it's called unfinished learning. So it's going to be really important to understand the gaps kids have, the unfinished learning that exists when our kids come back to school. So I've asked Carla Smith, teacher extraordinaire, to reflect on what she, and I know she's not thinking about it the first time, she's been thinking about this all summer. What are you going to do? And let me sort of look at the question that I asked you about. Now that we're pretty much the remote world the first at least 4 weeks, how are you going to approach unfinished learning in your kids?
Oh, isn't that the $1 million question? And when I've had people ask me, oh, how are you enjoying this really long vacation since March? I have had exactly 1 week of vacation because I, for one, am spending my off time preparing for going back on in a way that looks like I know what I'm doing from the jump.
Like promoting for years, right?
Yeah. So here's a mistake that I might have made a couple of times in March, probably less in April, definitely not in May or June, because I also taught summer school. So I had more time than the typical teacher to adapt and ask a different group of kids, the summer school group for math and reading versus the regular science kids I had, how they liked different strategies I had, so I could easily gauge what was working, what wasn't working. And I simply just asked the kids, if you want to know what kids think, ask them. And a lot of my colleagues never just asked the kids, did you like that assignment? How'd you feel about that? Was that boring? How was my lesson today? What if you actually ask kids, did that help you learn? What would you rather do instead? So I've had to definitely release some of the learning, a lot of the learning. And I also realized that I talked to you about the project-based learning piece. What myself and a lot of others think of project-based learning wasn't project-based learning. It was like the dessert projects at the end.
Yeah.
And instead, I kind of was explaining it to students. I said, okay, imagine the project is Thanksgiving dinner. The project starts immediately when you're at the store buying the stuff. So from beginning to end, instead of the project being the table and everything's on it, everything you did for weeks up until that dinner preparing is the project. So now I'm planning my lessons for the fall, thinking of it. That's how I frame it in my head. Okay, is this helping the dinner get on the table? That's the ultimate result. If it's not, I ditch it. And I'm working on a really great team out of SMU. We're kind of, racking each other's brains. And there are times where it gets brutal. And they're like, that's not a line. I'm like, what do you mean it's not a line? And so the alignment piece for kids, if it's not a line, then why are we doing it? And so we think that it's time to back off because we're just teaching virtually. It's actually the opposite. It's time to be even more laser focused, more authentic, more intentional. And this time to me has helped myself and certain others who are willing to admit it, to realize how many of the things we're doing were just extra, the fluff, because it was in some curriculum guide somewhere, but it didn't help kids. But did we ask them if it did? We really didn't do that. So having kids become shareholders in their own education is not something that most teachers were experts at, but now we have to be, because if they don't like it, they're just not going to do it. And if they're in your class, you can make them. They're a captive audience. But now when they're just not logging on to Zoom, that's your feedback. They don't want to come to your class. So
it's a different way of showing the same message that it's not engaging.
Exactly. And so we are about to turn in today our second project. And when we're sitting in our seats going, oh my gosh, I love it, and you have goosebumps, that's when you can say, oh my gosh, how many of my other lessons gave goosebumps? Okay, well, there were some, but you thought they were that great, but if you didn't get goosebumps, why the heck would an 8th grader, in my case, want to do it? And they just won't. I mean, I teach 8th grade science in Dallas ISD. They will just not do it if they don't love it. So I would rely heavily on labs. I mean, that's true. Most of the time they were active. But in terms of the projects, that's where I've grown the most, is realizing, okay, I need to put many more choices in for kids to do and to be active the whole time, not just at the end of the unit. Because if they're excited about something that they have created rather than that I have conjured up, then they're of course, they're going to learn more, but they're going to show up. They're going to put their best foot forward. So for myself, that's the biggest change that I'm going to go into, is making sure that my kids have more of a say in their own learning trajectory.
So what will you do to assess their unfinished learning at the beginning of the year?
Oh, yes, that was how you started, and I kind of went on my little tangent. Well, where I shy away is saying, oh, I'm going to give them a diagnostic test, because that's what we typically do. And I actually took that question and asked some of my administrator friends, one being the principal of a Town View Science and Engineering magnet. And, he's like, well, you can't get away from the data because, of course, the numbers don't lie. So that's true. You really do need to know where your kids are at. But for them to show up week one and say, here's this test to take, I think they're going to, think, oh, it's that kind of class again, right? So myself, I am in the midst of coming up with, okay, what learning tasks could I ask and invite students to do that would demonstrate if they had those skills or not, rather than A, B, C, or D. So I'm trying to come up with actual learning tasks that would show me what they were supposed to be coming with and sweep it into eighth. And then when they fall down and falter, that's where I come in and support, i.e. reteach, provide other learning experiences for kids, small groups. That's another one. Way more small groups. My daughter's a teacher, and she was telling me that they have to do 3 days a week of small group pullouts rather than the didactic, here we go, feed kids one way for 5 days. 3 days a week is pulling kids out. So that's what I think I am going to steal from her is way more small groups to pull out so I can find out kid by kid where exactly I need to support. And a lot of times it's in the math and the reading, not just the science, because of course math and science are married. So I'm already collaborating with several math teachers from my SMU cohort about different strategies, because of course a math teacher is going to teach math in a different way than the science teacher does. And so I realized, wait a minute, I'm the math teacher, I'm the science teacher, I'm the reading teacher. I've got to be equally as savvy in all of those. So that's another one is I'm really bolstering my differentiation in math and reading teaching, in addition to just finding more science activities.
So, one of the things that we're doing, for example, in my district is we're starting with a culture and climate project. And we are wanting to sort of help kids in an engaging way review what our school cultures should be, especially with new students. Because, during all of this, we still have over 200 new students who say that they're joining us, both in the school and remotely. So what you said makes sense. And I had heard my curriculum team talk about giving the math test, which is a very, it's a very nice little test that you give 3 times a year. It's not a star type. But we wouldn't give it till like the 3rd week of school for a couple of reasons. But you just gave an excellent one, because we don't want to start off saying, welcome back to school, here's a test. And then it puts them in that, okay, I'm not showing up tomorrow. Instead, we have this fun culture and climate project, which includes going over, we have a STRR, safety, trust, respect, and responsibility, that's our part of our culture traits, and it's also part of the New Tech Network that we use. And so we're able to infuse those character pillars in growth mindset opportunities in fun and engaging ways. And so I know that we were giving the test 2 or 3 weeks down the road because we want to make sure we had reached all the kids. But I think we need to add your reason to that. And that is, let's hit them with fun school first. Relevant in the sense of, we still sneak in some teaks that we know they're going to come in low in, but that we take the focus off the teak and we put it on, the fun part of being a student at Legacy, right? So how do you do the climate and culture in your classroom?
That's also another thing I was going to say is you've got on one hand the rigor, and that was lacking for, I would say, most teachers in the spring compared to their brick and mortar version of the same lessons. Of course, the other part is, why are you trying to give the same lessons as you would brick and mortar? If you were a parent and you suddenly had to parent your kids online, there's no way you could do it the same way, nor could you do it as well if you only used the same tools that you had. So one of the things that my campus is doing, in addition to coming up with different digital resources, closing the digital divide, for teachers, because kids are better at technology than we are. Let's all get that straight. Kids will tell you a lot more about how your computer works than we usually can. And I've asked kids that. But as far as the cultural piece, we're coming up with, we just took a survey our administration sent out last week and asked us to rank all of these different culturally sensitive topics. Do you feel this way and that way? It was like 5-6 pages, and I was pretty authentic in my responses. It was a select team from the campus who they predicted would be brutally honest, and the honest truth is, no, we aren't talking about the things, even staff member to staff member, to come back and not address, gee, we had a lot of protests this summer. What were those about? If you don't even acknowledge the elephant in the room, then I think you're dismissing it. And a lot of kids are going to feel like you are not seeing their struggle. And so that's something that in my summer school group, that was a really big deal. There was riots and protests throughout June. And we talked about that, while we're reading books, and kids said, I think it's happening because it makes me feel. So if you allow kids to share their voice and their ideas, that goes a long way in their feeling that they belong in your classroom, that they can be themselves. Also, do you share as a teacher with your kids, or do you only talk about, here's the lesson for the day, all the way to here's the exit ticket? Or do you say, yeah, in between grading those great essays I got, or whatever it was, I cleaned out that closet I was avoiding. Kids jump on that. Really? What was in the closet? Oh, it was a mess. Tell us more. They can't wait to see what you're doing in your life. Even if you went to the grocery store, did you wear a mask? Was it crowded? Did they have anything you were looking for? They really liked seeing my house. I gave a tour of my house, the main areas, the kitchen, the dining rooms. On day one, I said, welcome in. This is our new class. You're a guest here. They loved it. I put it on YouTube and they said, oh my gosh, I loved your, this decorating. And I let them do that because they felt like, wow, I've been to your house. I said, yeah. So there's a lot of different ways to do that without just reading an article. There are articles, of course, out there that you can read with kids, but just making them feel like you actually care about what they're doing individually. Emailing a kid, send them an email. Hey, I noticed you were quiet today in Zoom. Is there anything I can help you with? I've gotten emails back about things that were happening on the personal front in their family. It's hard because so-and-so was sick, or so-and-so left. Maybe their parents were getting divorced, and they may share that with you, and you can at least acknowledge, okay, wow, that's tough for you. Been there. I understand. Well, let me know if you need to have a private Zoom and we can get you caught up on the work. And a whole lot of kids took me up on it when I sent the email rather than the blanket statement in class. Well, email me if you need help. Bye. And then they log off and go play video games or go sleep all day, like you mentioned before.
I don't know if you realize this, but when I asked you to tell me interventions and assessments, your talk always goes to SEL. Your natural instinct is to reach them first, socially and emotionally, because your instincts are telling you they're not going to test well. if I don't reach them there. They're not going to respond well to this intervention if I don't reach them. So I don't know if you know that about yourself, but
I think that's why it actually works for me, because up here, I mean, I was valedictorian in high school, summa cum laude. I was a pre-med major. I've got that part going on. But way back in the day, probably when I very first started middle school, there wasn't that connection at first, because middle school kids they'll either love you or they hate you. There's not a big in between. It's a dichotomy. And if they don't see that you see them and want to know them and get them, if they feel like you get them and are interested, they will go to battle for you. And you'd want them to go to battle for themselves, and sometimes they won't. But if they feel like, wow, this person, maybe the first person ever who's on my side, they will never forget that. And so if you can relate to a student in such a way that it invites them to just keep stretching and give more and more and more, because it's not comfortable. What we're asking kids to do is not comfortable. And if you don't make them feel safe, they're not going to renegotiate their relationship with risk. And that's what we're asking them to do. I regularly show them, here are my pictures of the week of astronaut training I did at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. And I tell them, I don't like heights. I don't really like diving in water. I know you do, but I don't. So here I am going backwards on the zip line into the lake and have to escape the underwater helicopter. And the reason I show them that is I didn't want to do a single one of those things. And it lasted for a week, like 16 hours a day. I said, but on the other side of it, I did it scared. I did it not knowing, there were no guarantees. And I'm so glad that I did. And I grew. And when I showed them, here's my, flight suit and my graduation picture, I said, no, I want you to remember this. I'm not asking you to do anything that I wouldn't do. I'm not sticking you up on a platform way in the sky and sending you underwater. And they respect that. They go, wow. I said, yeah, I'm old. I mean, I'm going to be 50 this year. And here I was, I don't even wear swimsuits. And here I am, just so that it lowers the affective filter, that I'm willing to go out on the skinny branches myself. And I want them to trust me. And I had to trust my crew trainer. So not only that, I bring him in. So they see that at the beginning. Every year he's been coming in the day before Thanksgiving break and telling the story. Oh, you should have seen her. Oh, don't let her fool you that she's all, the drill sergeant in class. She was shaking in her boots. She didn't want to do anything. She made a billion excuses and I wouldn't let her out of it. And they're like, Miss Smith made excuses? I said, yeah, we all do. But there has to be somebody there who doesn't let you off the hook so that you can get better. And this is who had to do that for me. And I'm doing that for you. So they have context for why you're pushing.
So are you able to describe to them the satisfaction that you felt when you made it?
Oh, I have a mural. It's a giant shrine in my classroom. And in fact, my classroom is now NASA themed. And I've taken it so far. They know I speak in February. I've spoken every year now at Johnson Space Center at the Space Exploration Educators Conference. What do I know about it? What do I know about that? Well, a whole heck of a lot now, because I let somebody push me when I was going to sign up for that. As it turns out, in the application, it took me about 6 hours because I had to write all these essays on why am I doing this? Oh, I really have to go into why am I doing this? How will kids benefit? Because if I get out of my comfort zone and allow myself to be pushed, who knows what's possible on the other side? I showed them my rocket that I built. That was a terrible mistake. It was like, it looked like October sky, if you've ever seen that. And there I was laughing. I said, oh my gosh. And they can't believe that I was such a failure. And I said, it was awesome because I'm not one who likes to fail. I'm the straight A student. That's the perfectionist. And that didn't work there. It didn't work. I wasn't perfect. In fact, I was bad at all of it. And now to be able to so openly share that allows them to see a side of me that most of the time I don't show. I've got this and it's all perfectly, methodically laid out. This was a train wreck. And because I allowed that to happen, I allowed that space to go, okay, it's a train wreck. And now what do? I went, okay, that's really what scientists do. That's actually science. I was doing science then, not when I had it all figured out. And so that's why I told them, this is how I know how to teach science, because here I am bombing. Look at this mistake. Look at this terrible thing. And
So-
they go, oh.
So I'm just curious, as you were talking, you were saying labs. How in the heck are kids going to do your labs remotely?
Yeah, right. That's been the biggest struggle. That's been the biggest struggle because, yes, we've had to go. There's several interactive sites that I've found where the kids are manipulating variables. It's not the same by any means. Okay. And there's a certain limit. Like, I can't tell kids to go get these certain chemicals out of the garage and mix them in the house, right? There's a safety issue there, and they don't have that. So some of it is cool demos where, at least last year, I could say, hey, remember when we did? And then I could do another demo. Sadly, we're going to start out the year teaching chemistry to kids who don't remember because they weren't with me. If, the kids that are either choosing to be remote, or if we all go back remotely, we don't know. It was September 8th. So that makes me sad. So I've had to go and find, okay, well, what are the best videos? What are the pieces that they can do? Like, what can they mix the kitchen chemistry piece where it's like, oh, there's no, it's not going to go, wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you can't just have them sit and watch you, that's not good either. So that's where I thought, okay, I'm going to embed some of the things that they would normally be doing at home, like cooking. Okay, so where were the chemical reactions when you were baking cookies? Okay, so then that's actually quite an advanced equation that would go along with that if you talked about the effect of baking soda on. So you can, figure out what it is that they're doing already at home and identify the physical and chemical changes that they were causing. If they're chopping up the onion versus when they're cooking it. So it's not as quote unquote cool as all the fancy chemical reactions we can cause in the lab. But what's cool about it is when they figure out I was doing a chemical reaction, all I was doing was making, whatever the dish was. Yeah, that's a chemical reaction. I found that they got excited about that. As mundane as it was their chemical reaction.
Well, yeah, when you bake banana bread, right?
Or an egg, the permanent change in an egg, and then when they got interested, then they can go down the rabbit holes of the internet and find what other chemical reactions are you doing on a daily basis. Reading the bottles, like the vitamin bottles, and then the periodic table. Okay, how many of these? It's a scavenger hunt. Okay, bring back something with potassium in it and go. And then the kids are running and they're coming back with something and holding it up to the camera. Some things like that. So you have to try and almost gamify it. But okay, if you think you can find an alkali metal, and go. So then they're checking the chart. What's an alkali metal? Lithium. Oh, a battery. So I thought, okay, this isn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. They've got chemistry all around them. They just didn't even realize it, and you get to bring it out of them.
So here's, as you were talking, I think I need to have you on. I don't know if next week we need to talk about asynchronous versus synchronous instruction and how that looks in the classroom. So I hear that we have questions, which I can't really see. So let's see, JP, can you bring them up? Can you either type them or just come on and ask the questions? I'm not seeing the questions pop up on my side.
What will math support look like?
Okay. Ooh. Yeah, again, let me bring a math person on to answer that question, because that's going to require an expert. What's another question? Can you see them, Carla?
That's the only one I saw. I actually asked one of my partners, she's a math teacher, last night. And she says, I'm going to assume they know nothing. and I'm going to teach every lesson as if they know nothing. In other words, you're embedding that scaffold all the way up instead of starting at the top rung of the ladder. You build it all the way up. I always compare it to the double helix of DNA that you're winding and winding. But in between the helixes, it's got the little connectors all the way up. And if you lose those connectors, that's a mutation. So education can have mutations because you've got those little missing connections.
So we only have really 4 minutes left. So I want to thank you. I can tell that you need to come on and again, asynchronous versus synchronous learning, I think, is something we've talked about a lot, but we really haven't talked about what that looks like in an actual classroom. So I know you've been having to think about that. And we'll test in English and essays, and how will they be administered? You know what? A lot of wonderful things have happened with online platforms, apps, and websites. So MAP, for example, we were not able to give our last MAP test last year because we had kids who had their own devices, and we would have had to have them come in and put a software on there that would have allowed them to take the MAP test at home. I think MAP has solved that problem. There's been a lot of problem solving done by companies to be able to take tests, do essays online. And so you'll be hearing a lot about that. And if I'll try to find information, bring experts on that to answer those kind of questions. Again, we have 3 minutes left, and I want to say thank you for your patience as we got better from the first half hour to the second half hour. I think the second half hour flowed pretty well, especially once we got our teacher expert on. We want to ask you to please like and follow us, not only the Ask Dr. Be Good page, but also the JP, Kathy, and the Crew Network, so that you can get notices of when the Ask Dr. Be Good show will be on. There'll be a replay during the week of the show, so that if you didn't catch it at 8 o'clock on Sundays, you can catch it during the week, so that you don't have to, and that's what our world is now. You don't have to wait or not watch a podcast anymore. You just have to save it, and next time you're in the car, next time you have 30 minutes or an hour, you can play it. So I hope that all of us like this evolving into our new world of the podcast world. We're going to be on so many more platforms, reach so many more people, and be able to tap into so many more resources, especially around public education, so that all of you stay informed. And let me remind you, in my last 2 minutes, I do this show to create public education advocates. Gone are the days where parents just could send their kids to school and that was it. There are politics surrounding public education such that if you're not aware of them, and if you don't help us with managing those politics, your child will be impacted. Money will be cut, especially because of this COVID period, and we need to create our pub ed advocates such that you all are contacting your legislators and are making your voice heard about helping them prioritize their upcoming funding cuts to the budget. Thank you again, Carla. I know it's not the last time we'll see you. Thank you, everyone. And if I didn't answer all your questions, I'll go online and after the show and respond to your posts, your comments. Thank you, everyone.